In this video, we're going to discuss swapping out your buffer, your weight, to help with an overgas system. But before we get into it, if you would please subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, and if you could, become a member. So the big question is, you buy an AR-15. It could be a budget AR-15 like one of ours here. You know, these Bear Creek Arsenal PSA lowers. Or it could be, a brand name product. A lot of times, especially with the little short carbine length gas systems like this particular gun has with an M4 barrel, pretty common setup in a rifle, the gun is overgassed. Now, how do you know that, or what do I mean by that? Well, when you're shooting the rifle, we have it here, when the brass is ejected from your receiver and it is going, what they say, to the 1 or 2 o'clock position, forward of you and out front. You want the brass to come out, hit the deflector, and be to where you'd look over your shoulder, either at the 5 or 6 o'clock position. You want the brass behind you. That means that the ammunition and the recoil and the system is working good. So this particular gun, the stuff was going in a 1 or 2 o'clock position. So we're going to change out the buffer and basically just put a heavier buffer in, and it should calm this down. So we're going to look at some buffers, and the thing is, buffers can be expensive. Okay, this particular H2 buffer I got from one website, and it was, like 35 units, 29, 30, the 35. Some of them are more. Some of them are quite expensive, depending on who makes them. Okay, and also this is a, you hear that? This is a dead blow buffer. I found a place, KM Tactical is the name of the company, and I got an assortment of buffers, but the thing about these buffers, which kind of the question is, these are solid weight buffers, okay, so bear that in mind. Most of these are the dead blow, and why you want the movable weight is supposedly to help with bolt bounce. And of course, that's why this H2 costs more than this H2 buffer. Like I said, this one here, let's say is 30 beans, where this H2 was 14 units. Okay? That's the weird thing. And this company also has an H2.5, which I've never heard or seen one of these. And these things, for some odd reason, were only 8 simoleons, 8 units. Okay? So, let me get the scale out. I'll get the buffer out of this rifle that we're going to replace. And I'll explain to you how to do, basically you just disassemble your gun. I'm not going to show you here because I don't know if it's restricted. You take out the, you take the upper half off like you're going to clean it. You depress the little buffer retainer pin, slide the buffer and spring out, swap them out, put it back in. Pretty simple. You probably could find a video on it, but I'm not going to do it because I have no idea if it's forbidden and I'll get a strike or whatever. So let's get to the part where we weigh everything. Okay, what do we have? We have the basic buffer that came with our PSA lower. This is a standard buffer, and this is a dead blow. There's nothing wrong with these buffers and this weight. I believe if the rifle had a mid-length gas system, everything would be hunky-dory. This is the H2 buffer I got. Like I said, it cost about 35 units with shipping and that. You're looking at 40 units for this. Now these KM Tacticals, like I said, I have, this is a solid and it's marked H2. And this, the cost of this was 14 units. Now weirdly enough, this one is different, has a different color. This H2.5, this only cost 8 beans. And this is actually what I'm putting in this rifle here, the wide rifle. And then I got an H3. Now why did I get an assortment of buffers? They were inexpensive enough. I bought 2 each because I knew I'm going to use one of each of these different weights. And then what do I do with this buffer? I set it aside, and if I get something with a mid-length gas system and a collapsible stock, this should work just fine. So it was a spare part. So that's the cost of everything. So what are we looking at? We'll get the scale running again. It's the weight, okay? And solid buffers, they say without that dead blow, you might get bolt bounce, light strikes, and things like that. If the bolt's bouncing back, you're going to get light strikes. It'll feed and everything, but see, that's when it slams and bounces back, you'll get light strikes and the bolt will not go in the battery. That's the only downfall of these inexpensive solid ones. Alright, so the one we got with it, let's see what the weight is. Weight is 3 ounces, okay, which is the standard buffer weight for any gun. But like I said, with our short gas system, we're a little overgassed, which the gun functions fine, but what it's going to do, it's going to recoil more sharply, rapidly, and wear out. So now we got, you can get an H1 also, which they didn't have, so I didn't get. So H2, and we'll take the inexpensive one. And these are all about correct. Okay, 4.6 ounces for our solid H2. Our fancier, more expensive one, 4.6. So these are the same, 4.6. Okay, and when I put this buffer in the gun, it ran a little bit better. It was throwing at the 3 o'clock, not quite. So I got this H25, which this 5.1 ounces. This buffer is what I put in this particular rifle here, our Wild build from Bear Creek and PSA, and I believe that will have the ammunition being thrown to the rear at 5 or 6 o'clock. Now, I also got an H3 buffer. Now, a lot of people said they use this particular buffer with like a 50 Beowulf or something, you know, the big boys. And this is a 5.6 ounce buffer. Generally, these 3 weights in a carbine configuration should be okay. When you start getting into the short 7-inch barrel pistol configurations, you may need something else, something heavier than that. And I'm just going to use the standard spring. I'm not going to change anything out on there, and just leave the standard spring in there, and everything should be fine. Alright, so we've placed the H2.5 buffer in this particular build, and hopefully that will iron everything out and get the gun functioning fine. Okay. With my other build, I am going to swap the buffer out and put a little bit heavier one in there, because I was going at the 3 o'clock position and I'm looking more for the 4 or 5. Generally, In doing this, that's how you tell you get your brass behind your shoulder at 5 or 6 o'clock. You should be looking over your shoulder to where the brass lands. Now, if the buffer's too heavy, what will happen? You may have feeding problems. The bolt may not lock back on the last round because there's too much weight or spring pressure. And if the solid ones are bouncing the bolt, what will happen is you would get light strikes and the gun won't go off. Okay, in other words, the bolt's not going all the way in the battery and you'd get malfunctions along that line. Then I would suggest, and I will test these out and tell you guys how these solid ones work or if to avoid them. They're fairly reasonably priced and everybody gives a good feedback on it. I haven't heard any negatives about it, but a lot of people suggest not to use these. So that's it. We'll cover this in functioning and how it works, and I'll get back to you and tell you guys how this all worked out. All right? And stay tuned.